Hello, friends watching on all the channels. Welcome to a recording of my podcast. I'm so happy you joined me today on the podcast. In just a second here, I'm going to hit record and we're going to be in to this whole thing. I'm really happy you're here. For those who have been watching and listening each and every week, so many of you tune into the show. So, I'm going to hit record and we're going to be in throughout the show. You're welcome to drop questions in the chat. If you're watching asynchronously at some other time, feel free to send a direct message question and I'll do my best to get to it on the show. That's where a lot of these questions come from. So I'm going to hit record and we will be into our podcast recording for today. Thanks for being here, friends. Here we go. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Joanna Whaley podcast. We're getting closer and closer to Christmas. A couple things that you can do to stay connected, to support this show. If you're an LGBTQ person, or you're an ally, or a parent of a queer kid, or maybe a pastor who just needs some spiritual support in all things LGBTQ, you can go to patreon.com/Joanna Whaley for as little as $1 a month. I can kind of become pastor advisor for you. You can also, if you're in the giving mood this Christmas, go to joannawhaley.com/donate and you can gift subscriptions to Patreon. Today on the show, we're going to be answering a whole bunch of questions still centered around being LGBTQ, being an ally, and the holidays, because there's a lot of things to talk about in this area of queerness and spirituality. Friends, thanks for joining us on the show. On the other side of the music, we will get started. Here we go. Alrighty, friends, again, welcome to the show. My name is Joanna Whaley. I'm a former evangelical pastor, and I'm a transgender woman. And yes, those two identifiers have created quite a world for me. And I have had to navigate in my life, what does it look like to be spiritual? What does it look like to hold a Christian faith and queerness? Before we really get into stuff today, this Christmas, we're asking questions. I'm answering questions that have been sent to me throughout the week on all of my social media channels. Speaking of social media, we have to talk about this. For those of you who watch live on this show, many of you watch this show live. Um, in the last year, I have had 80,000 people listen to my podcast live on TikTok in just the last year and through asynchronously through TikTok. 80,000 of you have listened to this show, and we may be potentially losing TikTok. So here's what I need you to do. I'm sad that we're going to lose such a large avenue of listenership here on the show. Do me a favor. Go to all of my other social media channels. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. I am on Blue Sky. Just look up Joanna Whaley Music and follow and join the live streams there. I'm also on YouTube at the same name. Also, do me another solid. Go find this podcast wherever you get your podcasting and follow the show. That is the main feed of this show. That's how this show started. Still many thousands of you listen to that avenue. But I would love to have you follow and listen on all of the other social media channels, because for my dear TikTok friends, it looks like we are going to be losing that avenue soon, come January. Okay, this week, friends, many of you asked questions through all of my direct message avenues, through all of the ways in which we navigate spirituality, all the ways you listen to the show. You have asked questions, and I want to answer them. The first question for today's show comes from Jennifer from Facebook. Jennifer asked, during the holiday season of reflection and renewal, how can we find solace and strength when we feel disconnected from our past beliefs and relationships? This is a huge question that is really common in queer communities, but also in deconstruction communities within Christian faith circles. The deconstruction movement, if you will, has been growing increasingly over the last couple of years. And how do you feel connected to this time of year? How do you feel connected to Christmas when you've really disconnected and deconstructed your Christian faith? It's a great question. And one of the ways that I've kind of come to navigate this Christian holiday, right? This Christian holiday is to first just remember God's inclusive love. That's been the first thing that I've had to do with Christmas, is just remembering it is not this like, Jesus came because people were terrible and this like baby had to come to die and this whole I have completely deconstructed this whole idea of what's called substitutionary atonement theory. What is that, Joanna? You might ask. This is the idea that Jesus had to come to earth and die for our sins. And there are people that are in and there are people that are out. And I have completely had to undo that idea, right? And I've also had to undo the idea that God is mad at people in this world and doesn't include people. Romans 8:38 through 39 says, "For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, or any powers, neither height nor depth, or anything else in creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Jesus Christ our Lord." I am a Christian, I'm a queer Christian, and I believe that nothing can separate us from that love, as the Christian scripture says, right? That's one of the ways I've been able to find solace and find strength in this season, even though my whole faith system has completely changed in the last couple of years. Great question, Jennifer. I have so many more other things I could say about that topic, but we'll move on. If you're listening live, feel free to drop a question in the chat. If you are over 18, we want to be respectful. And I'm not here to argue my existence to you, but if you want to have legitimate spiritual questions about queerness, maybe your queerness or you're navigating deconstruction, feel free to chime in. Hit request to join if you're watching live. The next question came in from Adam on Instagram this week. Adam asked, how can transgender men cope with the constant pressure to conform to gender roles, especially during emotionally charged holiday seasons? What are strategies that can help them navigate these challenges? Adam, wow, what a question. This is a huge thing that we have to understand, is that one, understanding that your identity, your transness is given to you by God. One, I think that's a really important thing, especially as this over spiritual, well, I shouldn't say this spiritualized time of life, right? Is really pushing families together. It pushes a spiritual narrative together. And we need to first understand that our identity comes from God. You hear this Christian scripture used against the trans community all the time, but I want to flip it in affirmation of who you are first and foremost, Adam. Is Psalm 139:14 says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know that full well." Adam, first and foremost, know full well that your transness was placed there by God, and you absolutely were designed to be the amazing person you are. The other thing is that, you know, um, there's a lot of gender role norms, and I think I talked about this a lot on my show last week, but is just to remember that it's okay for you to define what your masculinity means in your family systems and your family structures. It's okay for you to make sure that you're continually defining that and redefining that in your family units. Embrace yourself. If you can first remember that you were created to be yourself, right? That can give us the confidence to advocate for ourselves inside of our family units. But also, Adam, prioritize yourself. Make sure in this season that the spiritual undertones of who you are and who God created you to be, and that God didn't make mistakes, which is all the stuff you're gonna hear around the Christmas dinner table, right? Remember first and foremost your divine creation as yourself, Adam. Yes, I believe that your transness was put there by God. But remember, it is okay to prioritize your health, your mental health. You can engage in things with your family if at any point during this time of year you find that someone is stepping into the need to define your masculinity for you. It is okay to practice self care. You are allowed to step away. You are allowed to say, "Hey, mom. Hey, dad. Hey, aunts and uncles. I will just be coming to dinner this year because all of the other gendered roles you expect of me, I am not going to fulfill for you." It is if my gender identity and role is not going to work in the long run here, I'll see you at dinner or just make different plans. Lean into chosen family if you have to, who will totally and fully accept you. Leave a question in the comment section. I do not reply to hateful messages or people trying to argue my identity. I only answer questions in good faith. So I am thankful you're here, friends. If you're listening on any other channel, feel free to drop in a question. Hit request to join via over 18. Be respectful. I will not argue my existence with you. RJ on Blue Sky says this. Um, Ask this question: what are challenges and benefits of choosing to opt out of traditional holiday celebrations, and how can individuals find personal meaning and connection during those times? Whew, a hard one, right? It is so hard when you have to choose and opt out. You can see so many queer folks in our world have to opt out of family engagements because of religious interpretations about how they should be, who they should be, right? So many queer people have got to opt out, unfortunately. We have to be careful not to just socially isolate during this time. If you are going to opt out, the first thing I'm going to say, if you're part of like a faith community, you will I would say lean into some of that community. If you have chosen family, lean into that community, but also realize you don't have to live up to these cultural expectations of like Hallmark's idea of what family should look like around the holidays. Maybe for you, um, RJ, is to really lean into the things that you love. I talked about this a ton on last week's show, but just leaning into like and feeling and allowing yourself to let go of the cultural expectations of what the holidays should look like. And for many queer folks around this time of year, they have to drop family engagement. They have to drop all of these things because of religious interpretations and how people expect them to live. And I would also just say this is a great opportunity to be focusing on your mental health, on your spiritual renewal. This is a great time, especially for queer folks, to be really evaluating and reevaluating their spirituality. I think this is a great time of year to really be asking yourself questions of who am I? How does my life interact with the divine? And I find this a wonderful time to be doing those introspections. and find things that you love and enjoy. For me, I still I celebrate with my kiddos and all that during the holidays, and I find a lot of joy in that. Yes, it looks different, but finding ways to love this time of year the best you can. Friends, we are going to go to a commercial break. If you're watching live, feel free to tune in and request to join, hit the request to join button, ask a question in the chat. On the other side of this commercial break, I will be happy to answer those questions. Friends, don't go anywhere. We will be right back after this short commercial break. Hey, friends on podcast or on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. Feel free to ask a question if you would like. I have plenty of questions here, but if you're an LGBTQ person and you're trying to figure out how to navigate the holidays and Christmas, please send a question through the chats, and I'll be really, really happy to answer those. I see Frankie. Hi, Frankie. Wow. Haven't seen you in forever, my friend. Good to see you. I hope you're still doing music. Frankie is one of the most talented musicians I ever played with. So nice to see you. Say hi to your wife for me. Yeah. Oh, it's just so nice to see old friends on here. All right. We're coming back from commercial. Here we go. It is live. Hello, friends. Somebody just asked live. This isn't live. It is live. Here's the thing. It's so funny whenever I do this show, people that ask like homophobic and transphobic questions think that I'm ignoring them, which absolutely I am. Anyways, welcome back to the show, friends. Oh, there is one thing that I won't miss about TikTok is the transphobes. That is really one thing I'm not going to miss when it disappears into, the rest of the world and not in America. Okay, let's get back to questions here. We've got a lot of them. Craig on Facebook asked this question. What strategies can LGBTQ individuals use to cope with the challenges of spending the holidays in unsupportive environments? And how can they find joy during this time? Really hard. It's a really, really hard one because there's so many queer folks who are getting ready to go to family parties, who are getting ready to go to that church service with their parents or that home church. They're traveling back home, but every year you go to this like church service. And listen, one year, I'm not even kidding, I worked at a church, and at Christmas Eve, the pastor got up on stage and said, happy gender neutral, politically correct, queer queer holiday or whatever. I'm not even like, the pastor said this, and he says, no, Merry Christmas. And the whole crowd like stands up, like cheering, like they're not allowed to say Christmas, right? That's what queer folks are getting ready to go back to on the holidays. And if you're saying, I've never heard that in church, you didn't go to my church. It's my church. That was very, very normal language, especially around the holidays. People would come in and visit. And this is what queer folks are getting ready to go into. You're getting ready to go home to the unsupportive family. You're getting ready to go home to attend the midnight service at the super, super unaffirming church. So what can you do? How do you take care of yourself? First thing is to set boundaries. If you are going to go home, and let's say your family is unsupportive, I think it's important to have, Rhea says just don't. Absolutely. Maybe you just don't go home this holiday. Maybe you don't. And that may just be a boundary you have to set to say, Mom, Dad, I'm not coming this year. I just can't. I can't get with how you treat me. And let's say they're like, please, Craig, come to our church service. They love everybody because everyone's a sinner, right? But you just might have to say no. Say, hey, family, thank you. Maybe the family's cool, but the church is really triggering to you. You just have to say, hey, I'm not going to go to church with you this year, but I'm just going to stay here and like watch TV. I'm going to like sit here and watch Hallmark or whatever, watch football. Whatever you need to do. Maybe take this time of like your own self spiritual reflection, right? Working on this idea of forgiveness. You're going to hear a lot of things. You're going to hear a lot of things being said. You're going to be misgendered. You're going to be, your relationship with your partner of the same sex is going to be called into question. It's a great time to lean into Ephesians 4:32, saying being kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other. This is a great opportunity to practice the spiritual idea of forgiveness. Always practicing spiritual self-care in this time. I think it's really important at this time of year to just say no to the family church service that maybe you've gone to forever and ever and ever, but it just might be time to say goodbye to that service. Moonlight is saying, are my honest questions out of bounds? I have filters on for those that watch live. I have filters on. So if you're saying homophobic and transphobic things or spiritually abusive things, it just blocks them out. If you don't feel they're being answered or coming through, you can feel free to send me a direct message and I'll be happy to answer your question live on the show. Kay sent an email at joannawhaley.com this week asking this question. So the holidays are a time for family, friends, and love. But what happens when the closest to us disappoint us and betray us? How can we hold the idea of unconditional love with the reality of human imperfection, especially during this season of goodwill? How do I hold these complex emotions and maintain my family relationships even when things don't go as planned? It's a really good question, Kay. I'm going to say there's a few things to think about in this area of things. Going back to that Romans thing, right? There's nothing that can separate us from the love of God. And there are going to be moments within your time with people and family and pastors who really are going to disappoint you this year. You're going to be sitting around just minding your own business, eating your mashed potatoes, at Christmas, eating the Christmas ham, and somebody's going to just say and regurgitate something they heard on Fox News this week. That is just horrible, right? Horrible and incredibly demeaning and dehumanizing to you. And you're going to ask yourself, is this the spirit of Christmas? Is this really, Uncle Tom, what you think Christmas should be about? And you're going to ask yourself, is what this person's saying about me, about my friends, about my chosen family, is any of this actually going to separate me from the love of God? The answer is no. Remembering that nothing can, nothing will. And it's important to understand that there's so many people in our family that may have good intentions and are just going to mess up. I can't even count the times for you around my affirming family that my dead name and old pronouns have come out in conversation. This is the time we're going to hear this stuff. It's going to be painful for a moment, but to remember the heart of those making that mistake too. There are so many times that I had my mom on the show about a year ago, and we talked about how hard it was for her to make the switch. And even, you know, 2.5, 3 years after transitioning, I still hear my old name sometimes, but I know the person making the mistake. And I know the love that person has for me, and I'm able to push through it. But it does let me down. These moments let us down. But when somebody is intentionally attacking us, when someone lets us down in that way, know that it is okay for you to advocate for yourself. Uncle Tom, what you're saying is absolutely horrible. Uncle Tom, what you're regurgitating from Jesse Waters' show on Friday is absolutely disgusting. What you just said about litter boxes in bathrooms, first of all, is not happening. But Uncle Tom, this is so, so disgusting. Do better, Uncle Tom. This is not the spirit of Christmas. Feel free to advocate for yourself. Okay. It's a great question. If you have a question, feel free to chime in, send a question through chat. If you listen to the show any other time of the week, feel free to direct message me. You can also go to joannawhaley.com/contact, and you can send in a question there. One of my favorite things to do is to block people. I What a lot of people don't hear when I am recording asynchronously. If you're just watching or listening asynchronously, you're watching. Sometimes audio listeners don't notice it, but people watching live see my arm go up a lot. It's because I'm blocking people. So it's become a spiritual practice for me this year. Another question that came in this week, Carrie from Facebook asked this question, said, I'm reaching out because I'm really struggling. I've been seeking guidance from pastors about my gender identity, but they're all telling me to detransition. I'm feeling lost and alone. What should I do? Carrie, first of all, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that pastors are letting you down. I'm sorry that a religious interpretation is trying to force you back in the closet. You deserve better. And I need you to know that this is not the belief of every pastor in the world. There are so many queer affirming pastors in the world. It may not sound, you may not know there are, because maybe your religious interpretation told you that there aren't any. My religious interpretation, I grew up non-denominational in like megachurch world, and everybody, it wasn't even a concept that there was affirming pastors out there. First of all, there are. And you need to know it. So the first thing I'm going to say is make sure that if you're reaching out to pastors, the church is affirming. And if you're trying to understand, go to their website, go to their church. It will be blatantly obvious to you that the church is affirming. If you cannot find any affirming language anywhere, then I will tell you that that church is not affirming. If you cannot find a rainbow logo or a rainbow flag somewhere in the mix, you do not talk to that pastor, because you know what they're going to say. So don't ask their opinion, because their opinion is absolutely wrong about queer people. Now they're going to preach till they're blue in the face, and they're going to be convincing that their interpretation of the Bible is the right one. And I'm telling you, it is just one interpretation of the Bible. There are many, many, many affirming pastors out there. Trust in your journey, friend. and know that there are queer affirming pastors out there, and stop talking to pastors who are not. If you need resources to find those pastors, reach out to me. Friends who are watching live, don't go anywhere. We'll continue this conversation in some bonus recording content. For those listening any other time, our next episode will be right before Christmas. And I just want to say Merry Christmas to you, Happy Holidays, whatever it is. I hope that you find peace and know that you are not a problem for God, friends. We'll see you next week. Alrighty, everyone on TikTok and Facebook, I'm going to stick around here for a little bit. This is always kind of the fun part, is